I just want to tell you how heartened I am to see this room so full. Obviously, we've got a lot of enthusiasm in terms of changing the culture here in San Jose and throughout this valley. I'm very heartened by what I see right now. Okay, so this is about what I learned in Holland, and I have, since everything should come in threes, I have three basic lessons. So the first one comes from something that was said at a CEOs for Cities conference a couple years before I left, and that was that really decisions that are made within the public right-of-way, although undoubtedly for many reasons, most of all safety, we defer enormously to engineers about how we should design our roadways and who should be there and how fast they should move. Ultimately, the decision about what happens in the public right-of-way is a political decision. And that means it's driven ultimately by our public values. And I saw that very, very clearly in Holland. In the United States, of course, we emphasize moving cars. We have engineers at Caltrans tell us what to do with our streets. And in order to change anything with our street infrastructure, we need dispensation from the Pope. And it is an incredibly painful process, as I think Manuel and Hans and others in this room can attest, who have battled through trying to get variances from Caltrans to do very basic things. We've got a multi-month process just to change the color of our bike lane, if I'm not mistaken. That is the challenge, certainly, that we face here in the United States. And often members of the public go to a great city in Holland and say, why in the world can't we do that? Well, this business about culture and how we regard the public way is a big part of it. What I observed in the Netherlands, really, was that there were some obvious political policy objectives that the community shared. And it was around biking and how they use the public right-of-way and how people should ride bikes. Shiloh made a really important point about helmets. An awful lot of that was driven around a basic notion that the Dutch believe in very strongly, which was if you have a lot of people out there riding, traffic will slow down because people will become accustomed to many cyclists. And if you don't have many cyclists out there on the street, people will drive quickly and the roads are more dangerous. And in response to, there was a question that came up, where's the United States on that chart? We did actually have experts along on the trip that we met actually compared American rates, fatalities, much, much higher even than Italy. And of course it goes with sort of that notion. We don't have many cyclists out there. People drive very quickly and they don't drive expecting that there'll be cyclists around them. As a result, in Holland, for instance, anytime there's an accident, there's between a cyclist and a driver, there's an automatic apportionment of fault of at least 50% of the fault to the driver. You can imagine when people are fearing liability, how they're going to drive around cyclists. Certainly changes your worldview a little bit. Speed bumps. You generally won't find them in the city of San Jose, except for a couple streets here and there. But for the most part, you won't. And that's true in a lot of cities throughout the country. And that's true overwhelmingly because we have fire departments that say, don't you dare put speed bumps on our street, because we're trying to drive our trucks along your streets to respond to emergencies. And of course, if we go over speed bumps, then bad things happen. And I can tell you, I talked to 3 different traffic engineers in different cities in Holland. And every time I got the same response. They said, look, every single day, children are riding their bicycles on our streets. A fire truck will go over a street maybe once every couple years. Who do we, when we're trying to weigh the competing needs in terms of safety, what are we really going to look toward? We're going to put the speed bumps out there because we know the first and most critical issue is to slow the traffic down. That has the greatest impact on improving overall safety. It's not about moving traffic. It's not about simply responding to sort of the bureaucratic impulses of fire departments that pretty much dominate a lot of the cities throughout the state. The cycle tracks and physically separated lanes, I think that's something that people notice the most when they go to cities in Holland and Copenhagen and other great cities that have really been able to spend a lot of money on bike infrastructure. Again, we have those challenges here in building segregated lanes within the right-of-way precisely because it is so challenging to get variances from Sacramento. We're experimenting, I think, is it going to be next year, Manuel? We're going to do it along 4th Street and River Oak?
It's going to be next year.
Next year, yeah. So we'll be experimenting with 2 segments here in San Jose. Again, it takes an enormous amount of work for our staff to negotiate this with Caltrans to enable us to be able to pull it off. course, they have cycle tracks throughout these cities. These are incredible devices for really drawing people out onto the street, on their bicycles. They're certainly controversial, particularly in the United States. Many people believe because there are traffic conflicts, where there are traffic conflicts, drivers are less likely to see cyclists, and there'll be more collisions, more accidents, and so forth. In Holland, it's very clear. These cycle lanes, these cycle paths, get people out on their bikes. That means people are more aware of where the cyclists are. And that has a huge impact, obviously, on the safety. And then, of course, just the basic constraints, auto capacity. I think clearly San Jose has come a long way in the last decade or so in terms of recognizing that the purpose of our street infrastructure is not simply to move a high volume of traffic as quickly as possible. We've certainly made that transition, but unfortunately we've had to do so in a city that's largely built out. It's largely suburban developed city, a city built around the car. They understood all along that the purpose of streets is to accommodate people, not simply to move cars. And as a result, I think you see a much different streetscape out there in Holland. So lesson number 2, defining the market of who it is you want to serve in your streets really defines the infrastructure you build and where. In the United States, of course, we have a huge emphasis on spandex. Folks are out there on bikes for good reason, because they enjoy it. It's fun, right? It's recreational. But for the most part, with the exception of a lot of folks in this room, in San Jose and in most cities in America, not many of us ride to work. Not many of us commute on bikes. Because our focus when we talk about bikes and bike infrastructure in this city and many other cities is around the recreational rider, the huge focus is on trails. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing. We all love trails, right? The Green Vision says we should build out 100 miles of trails. It's a wonderful aspiration. I'm not knocking the Green Vision. But the question is that where our best marginal dollar is spent? Is on a trail, on a recreational route that'll get used by a dozen people on a weekend? Or the alternative, which is in the Netherlands, the market focus is on commuters. And as a result, you see an extraordinary amount of investment on streets, particularly in dense urban areas. And in the cities, their focus overwhelmingly is on building bike infrastructure to employment locations and to schools. And as a result, because they know that obviously if you're accommodating 30-35% mode share on commutes by bike, then you got to be able to accommodate that. And then finally, lesson number 3, land use matters. And Shiloh hit on this, and it's really awfully important. If really you see the mode share drop enormously when you see the trips go beyond 7.5 kilometers, it tells you something about where people need to live relative to where their destination is. Particularly in a city like ours that, although we're working hard to build transit infrastructure, we don't have the transit infrastructure of many eastern seaboard cities or European cities. It really becomes critical that we focus on land use. I think we're going to really see significant gains in mode share and the use of bicycles as a commute. I don't expect that overnight we're going to get 35% mode share, no matter how great the investment of dollars on our streetscape, no matter how great the change in culture. The difference is we are a city built for cars, and because of sort of the temporal sequence in which these different innovations came about, and the fact that so many California cities developed after the car, we've got much bigger challenges to overcome. And so certainly we have good reason to work hard on this, but it's important for us to temper our expectations about how fast we can become a bike city. And obviously we've got a lot of work to do. We've come a long way. Those of you who've been following here know that we've tripled our mode share in the last 5 years or so with a lot of hard work from the Silicon Valley Bike Coalition, DOT, and lots of other folks. But we're at 1.2%, and 35% is a little ways off.